You know that gritty, fuzzy guitar sound that pretty much defined rock and roll? Ever wonder where it actually came from? Well, it wasn't just an attitude, it was an invention. See, behind almost every big musical revolution, there's this powerful, often hidden force that shapes what artists can create. We're about to pull back the curtain on the secret history of how technology has always been the silent partner in the music we love.
So, if I asked you, what's the most important instrument in music history? What would you say? The piano? The guitar? Maybe just the human voice? Well, what if I told you the answer isn't an instrument at all? It's technology itself. Seriously, from the very first recordings that literally captured sound out of thin air, to the synthesizers that built entirely new sonic worlds, technology has always been the key that unlocks what's possible in music.
So in this explainer, we're going to walk through 4 key stages. First, we'll look at how we even learned to capture sound in the first place. Then, we'll see how technology started to create completely new sounds. After that, we'll dig into the tricky line between inspiration and just plain imitation in our modern world. And finally, we'll see how all creativity is really built on what came before.
Okay, let's dive right in. I want you to try and imagine a world without any recorded music. I mean, really think about it. A world where a song was this fleeting moment. Once it was played, poof, it was gone forever. It only existed in your memory or maybe as dots on a piece of paper. For centuries, that was just the reality for every musician on the planet. This chart really spells it out, doesn't it? Before recording, music was local and totally temporary. Sure, you could write it down as sheet music, but that's just the idea of a song, right? It's a blueprint. It's not the feeling, not the actual performance. Recording technology completely changed the game, making a single, unique moment permanent, something you could copy and eventually share with the entire globe.
And this timeline just puts that incredible shift into perspective. For basically all of human history, all we had were transcriptions. We can read Mozart's notes, but we'll never know for sure how he really sounded. Then, boom, 1877, the phonograph shows up. All of a sudden, sound could be caught and held. And not long after that, microphones and amps meant music wasn't stuck in quiet concert halls anymore. It could fill stadiums. You know, the very first thing ever recorded was a human voice saying, "Mary had a little lamb." It sounds so simple to us now, but you have to understand, this was pure magic back then. For the first time ever, a sound was plucked from the air and just played back. This wasn't just some new gadget. It completely redefined what music could be. It was the birth of a whole new industry. So technology let us capture sound. That was huge. But what happened next was honestly even more exciting. Technology stopped being just a recording tool and became a creative instrument itself, actively forging brand new genres from the ground up.
Let's talk about distortion. It actually started as an accident. Guitarists back in the 50s, like Link Wray, would literally poke holes in their speaker cones to get this rougher, grittier sound for his track Rumble. It was raw, it was dangerous, and it was totally new. Pretty soon, engineers figured out how to create this fuzzy effect on purpose just by overdriving an amp. It wasn't about making the guitar louder, it was about giving it a whole new voice, an angry, rebellious one.
And the impact of that? It was seismic. That one technological innovation, that one mistake, gave birth to entire cultural movements. It's almost impossible to imagine rock, heavy metal, punk, or grunge, and all the subcultures that grew around them without that snarling sound of a distorted guitar.
And then came the next revolution, the synthesizer. Now, this wasn't about changing an existing instrument. This was about creating sound from pure electricity. All of a sudden, artists had this palette of sounds that had never, ever existed in the natural world. It was like a painter being handed a dozen brand new primary colors.
And just like distortion defined the sound of the 70s, the synthesizer absolutely owned the 80s. Pioneers like Kraftwerk built entire musical worlds just out of electronics, and pretty soon the sounds of disco and new wave were pulsating with all these new textures. A new tool led directly to the unmistakable sound of a new decade.
So here's a fascinating little thought experiment. Just imagine giving a synthesizer to a rock and roll band back in the 1950s. The music they would have made wouldn't sound like 80s synth pop, but you can bet it would have been radically different from the rockabilly they actually created. It just goes to show you how deeply creativity is tied to the tools you have at that exact moment in time.
Which, of course, brings us to today, where the tools are more powerful and easier to get your hands on than ever before. But all this new power raises some really tricky philosophical questions about originality and what does it even mean to be a creative artist anymore?
I mean, think about it.
Today, tools like autotune can make a singer's pitch absolutely perfect, and drum machines can lay down a flawless beat with just the click of a button. And this accessibility is incredible, but it also sparks a huge debate. Some people feel like it lowers the bar, that it reduces the need for traditional skill and makes it harder to tell where the artist's talent ends and the software's power begins.
So this brings us to the million-dollar question. Where do we draw the line? On one side, you've got inspiration, building on things, transforming them, paying homage. But on the other side, you've got plagiarism, copying, stealing, imitating. Technology, because it makes sampling and borrowing so incredibly easy, has blurred that line more than ever.
Now, the law has a very clear answer, of course. A work is protected for the author's entire life, plus another 70 years. After that, it enters the public domain, which means anyone can legally sample it or borrow from it. So you could base an entire song on a melody from the 1800s and have zero legal trouble. But the bigger question is still there. Does that make it artistically original?
But maybe we're looking at this whole debate the wrong way. This final part of our journey kind of reframes the entire discussion. It suggests that influence isn't something to be afraid of, but is actually the essential foundation of all creativity.
I mean, just think about how anyone learns a craft. It doesn't matter if it's music or painting or writing. We all start by emulating our heroes, right? We have to copy our idols just to learn the basic language of what we're doing. It's only after we get fluent in that language that we can start to form our own sentences, to say something new and original in our own voice. It's a necessary step. The Beatles are a perfect example of this. When they exploded onto the scene, their influence was absolutely colossal. But what happened? A tiny, tiny fraction of bands just became simple copycats. But a massive wave of artists were inspired by them to be innovative and groundbreaking in their own unique ways. The Beatles didn't create a bunch of clones. They showed an entire generation what was possible.
And this right here just nails the crucial point. True inspiration isn't about copying. It's about elevation. It's about using the work of those who came before us as a foundation to reach new heights, to build something even taller so we can see a new horizon. It's that simple, powerful idea that when we stand on the shoulders of giants, we can all see a little further.
So, if the phonograph and the synthesizer and the electric guitar each unlocked entire universes of art, it leaves us with one final and pretty exciting question. What's next? What unimaginable forms of music and creativity are just sitting out there in the silence, waiting for the right tool to be invented to finally bring them to life?